Please, tag your it.
Okay, this is February 15th, 2024, and we're calling to order the Woodbridge Conservation Commission meeting. And the first item on the agenda is a public comment, and I don't think there's anyone here for public comment, and we didn't receive any public comment.
That's correct.
We have approval of minutes. Did people get the minutes?
Yes.
Does anyone have any comments about the minutes?
I did have a comment about the special meeting minutes.
Okay, well, should we do the February 1st first?
Sure.
Does anyone want to?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Sorry, who made a motion?
Rachel?
Okay.
Howard seconded. Okay, the February. What was the date of that? She's gonna be here. Just pick up the special meeting minutes, which were on, does anyone have the date of those minutes?
January
Come
31st.
down here, Val. He's
Okay.
presenting, so you might get
Well,
up to you, totally up to you.
January 30th?
Whatever you're comfortable
When
with,
were
that's
the
fine.
regular minutes? They were set, regular meeting?
31st. Yeah.
That's what I have written down.
Yeah.
I think it's the special meeting, we'll refer to them as the special meeting minutes. So they're,
The regular meeting,
Yeah, well, I think it was the
January 18th, I think?
18th,
Yeah.
thank you. That's what I was thinking.
okay, so we're looking at the special meeting minutes of January 31st. Does anyone have any comments on those?
Yes, the one. Sorry, I don't know if you saw it, but there was, one of the motions that we made specifically said, had the wetlands reviewed by an expert. And I think in her minutes, she didn't include the term expert, it was just have it reviewed for wetlands, but I think we specifically recommended that it be reviewed by a wetlands expert, right?
Yes.
We did.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to.
So I would just make that one comment,
So we'll have to remake it when Kathy gets back up.
add the term, expert to the wetlands evaluation for the Mylan Road property, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
38.
That would be my edit.
With that edit, does anyone want to make a motion? To
I so
approve?
move.
Barbara, so moved. Anyone second? I'll second. Everyone in favor of adopting these minutes? Unanimous? Okay, good. I think we want to re-welcome everybody to, this is now the full commission of 2024, and Rachel was here at a special meeting, but she hasn't been here since then. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about yourself for a second?
Sure, I'll go in the hot seat, no problem. So Rachel Guerra, I've lived in town for about 12 years now. My husband was born and raised in Woodbridge. I'm originally from Stamford, Connecticut. Moved to New Haven to go to school. Ultimately ended up staying there because I loved it so much. Worked in the area for quite some time. My background is journalism. I was a reporter early in my career covering planning and zoning board of appeals and first selectmen and everything else under the sun. So I've seen firsthand the impact decisions have, especially on the issues that we're faced with. But anyway, I won't ramble. So I did that for a bit, and I transitioned to TV news. So I did that for 10 years. I was a newsroom manager. And then after kids, transitioned to corporate communications, doing everything from social impact work, sustainability communications, crisis communications, you name it. My husband and I looked for a home for a very long time. We looked as far as Litchfield County, but because of the commute, we're like, why not just stick to the gem that we have right here? And we were lucky enough to find a home in Woodbridge. We've been here since. It's a beautiful town, and when the opportunity came up to serve on the commission, why not join, learn, and be a champion for conservation, right? So that's why I'm here. You're wondering.
Thank you. Wow, what a resource. should we go back just for 1 minute each and introduce ourselves so that,
Sure. Rachel knows who I am, but I'm Joy Prudhomme. I moved here about 11 years ago and have been very heavily involved in the community, starting with the school, PTO everything, and then I was an elected official on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I was asked to come on the commission. At the same time, I kind of had an overlap. I was on the Zoning Board of Appeals till the end of my term in December, and just re-upped for another 4 years on the commission. My passion, I'm a master gardener. I started a 4-H program. I'm a big nature girl from Maine, where I was born and raised, and I am, working at Macero Farm now as a farm-based educator, and I love that we're going to be able to, do some great work for the town, because it is so beautiful here, and very passionate about the pollinator pathway, which you'll hear more about, I guess, tonight. So, welcome to our new members, and excited to get to work with you.
I'm Sharon. I am been here for 30 some odd years, raised 2 children here, and I was on the Wetlands Commission for 15 years, I think, about. And I've been on this commission for about 4. And I also am passionate about our planet and making it as healthy as possible for now and into perpetuity. And I work with a naturopathic physician, and I'm also a PA.
Hi, Rachel. Diana Gregory, co-chair. I've been on the commission for a couple of years now. I'm born and raised Woodbridge, a little time away in between. My background is in energy and sustainability and conservation. So I look forward to working with you.
Rachel, so sounds like I'm kind of the newcomer here. I've lived in Woodbridge for about 3 years. Doesn't compare to 30. But I lived in New Haven for about 5 or 6 years before that, so I've been in the area a little bit longer. So I kind of gave more of a spiel last time, but I was originally a tech consultant and decided that really where my passion lay is conservation. So I sort of changed careers and got sidetracked into basic research and just finished up a PhD. And now I'm doing a postdoc at UConn. But this just seemed like a really great opportunity to actually, apply conservation in sort of in a real world setting instead of kind of this academic realm that I'm usually in. So I kind of jumped at the chance, and it seems like there's a lot of really great people on board. So I'm looking forward to working with everybody.
Hi, my name is Valerie King. I've lived here for 18 years. I lived in Westfield, New Haven for 19 years. I live here with my husband, but I also have 3 children. My background is in real estate. I'm a licensed mortgage loan officer and also a licensed insurance broker. And I am very elated to be on this committee. I've been on the committee for about 2.5 years, and feel it's a great group of people, and welcome aboard. Thank you.
I'm Barbara Hagan Smith. I've lived here most of my life, which I won't even go into. Although I did spend about 50 years down in the West Indies. But I went to Amity, I went to Center School, et cetera, and I came back actually to take care of my mother, how many years ago now. And I worked part-time in the library, but I was very involved in the Historical Society here, and conservation. I was the head of the Historical Society in the islands. I've always been involved in history, conservation, and so forth. I was delighted to get on this committee. Again, about 2.5 years ago, I think a lot of us got on at the same time. love working with everybody. So we're hoping to get lots done.
Nice to meet you all.
Hello.
Great, go ahead.
Nicky Cardozo. We've been in town now for about 30 years, raised two of our daughters here. One of them is in Boston and coming over tonight, which is, I may have to leave a little early because she's actually coming home, but my other daughter is in California. Been involved with town for quite some time, in different capacities, everything from the fire commission to a number of other commissions. Just recently ran for first selectman and was fortunate enough to be elected. We have some challenges that we face in town that certainly include parts that are very important from a conservation standpoint. So I'm very interested in some of the, particularly in the commissions that work with land, work with conservation and things of that nature. Because there are some things that I'm hoping we can do in Woodbridge to enhance what everyone has spoken about and which everyone has stayed in town for. I look forward to working with the group also and really seeing what comes out of it. So thank you, and I appreciate you joining.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
I think we were going to talk about, we put in here the role of the Conservation Commission. I don't have that blurb.
I do. I do. So I'll send this around to everybody, but there are some fact sheets where we can learn a little bit more about the authorities, the duties of the Conservation Commission. I'm not going to go through the whole shalls and mays and all of that, but I'm just going to give you the quick overview. So I apologize to everybody who has to listen to me and read this aloud. What is a Conservation Commission? Conservation commissions are volunteer municipal government bodies that are authorized by the Connecticut statute to conserve, develop, supervise, and regulate natural resources. And then it cites the section. However, the charge of the commission may vary by municipal ordinance. Commissions may manage open space, land, and water resources within their jurisdictional limits. Commissions have the authority to advise other boards and agencies about conservation concerns within the municipal projects and development. Conservation commissions have a role in increasing resiliency by suggesting how climate change may further impact natural resources due to specific land management in vulnerable locations. Commissions can represent the significance of how natural features can be a part of natural-based solutions to climate impacts such as flooding, excessive heat, erosion, shoreline stabilization, or poor water quality. Coordination between municipal boards and commissions, non-governmental organizations, and even adjunct towns is imperative when addressing climate resilience. Municipalities should utilize a conservation commission in finding solutions to site-specific concerns. For example, when considering flooding solutions, combining best practice stormwater management and conservation easements that protect open space and allows for natural stormwater infiltration would be an effective use of the Conservation Commission's authority and allow other level of monitoring and enforcement. It goes on and on for 12 pages, so I will stop there and let everybody else read the rest themselves. But I thought I'd at least get that out there, so we can talk a little bit more about it at our next meeting. But I'll share that.
I just wanted to share with you the resource handbook for Connecticut Conservation Commission that's online. It has like 60, 70 or 80 pages, I think.
And I will add that to your resource for our next meeting. Okay.
Events, what's happening around town? So there's something I know about is February 17th, Saturday at the library. There is a meeting gathering about composting. Composting by someone who's supposed to be well versed in this topic, and it's being put on by the Sustainability Commission and Sarah Farm. Right, so I think it should be short and to the point and informative, and maybe more. But in the thing that I was just looking at about waste disposal in the town of Woodbridge, in the
There's a survey.
The planned conservation development, 25% of land, things disposed of are organic materials. So I think that's a very low-hanging fruit for us to emphasize and maybe encourage
strengthen that statement that you just gave there about 25%. Just to be clear, 25% of municipal solid waste, 25% of the tonnage is credited to being food and
I think it's
biological
actually
waste.
higher than that, really, it's higher, and, yeah, so it's gonna be the way of the future, we're gonna have to take it out of the waste stream, like recycling, ended up having to come out, food waste that will be the way of the future, is we'll have to find another way, because
It makes great soil.
it makes amazing soil.
So, maybe that can be an undercurrent or theme of different things, but this is a time when the whole town can learn more in a very easy and efficient way.
Mhm.
And if I might add, it is something from a personal perspective or from a first selectman's office perspective, that from initiative, we are going to have a composting initiative coming out of our office, and it is something that we want to see from a town perspective.
Nice, great. Anything we can do to support it, please let us know.
Now, of course, there's still some evaluation that needs to happen, we have to go through the logistics to make sure it can happen, but that's something that we're very anxious or very committed to.
Great.
And the survey, I just saw that pop up today.
They just put it out today,
Yeah,
it just came out.
No,
If you haven't seen it yet, maybe I'll send that.
Very quick,
so
2
that you
minutes,
can-
really.
you know what might be good?
There's a
is
survey that's out about,
About composting and, yeah.
okay, so
If
we should
that
definitely.
lecture could be videoed and put up on the website.
It will be, Matt has already.
It will be, yes.
asked about that, it will be, and it will be
Okay.
available for folks to
Wow.
watch.
Any other pertinent events or things happening?
Just our Earth Day update. It is on Saturday, the 27th. I did speak, yes, on April 27th. I spoke with Alyssa Anderson, who's coordinating with Mika and the library for a successful Earth Day event. We're gonna have a table. I spoke to them too to see if they could have Macero and my 4-H table all kind of near each other so that I could kind of hop between the tables and represent, and she said that they're working on that, but figure 10 to 3 as the window to be at the table.
Okay, well, maybe we should divide up a shift or two, at least by the next meeting in March, so that we know what we're doing by April and figure out what we'd like to have on this table in terms of information. That can be an agenda item for next month.
And I would encourage everyone to come, even beyond your time at the table, because there will be so many good events going on, and is the plant sale gonna be happening too?
No, so, there's no plant sale from the garden club happening then.
Plant
No.
sale on Earth Day? No?
Not that I know.
It might be so bold as just to add one that's really not conservation related, but there's also a DEI conversation on disability on the 28th at 7 o'clock at the library as well.
28th of February?
February. February.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, great. Anything else people know about around town that's worth you know?
We were sent also that information on the, information, there's gonna be that.
What date is that, do you remember?
It's March.
Wednesday?
I think anyone who hasn't been to one needs to go to one.
Yes.
And any of us who have gone to one probably need to
So
go to one
what-
too.
So new
Very
members.
The FOIA meeting? Okay.
Mhm.
All right, I'll send that around. In fact, did everybody see that email?
I did not,
Thanks for mentioning that, Barbara.
but I might have, because I've just gone recently, so maybe I don't need to.
No, I think they sent it to everybody on the commission, but I'll find it again. I'll move forward around.
Okay, so, are we ready for old business? Tree preservation proposal, Barbara and Diana. Got anything on that?
The tree preservation, so the last I think we spoke, we were gonna connect with some of the folks from zoning. We did get a hard copy of the zoning regulations, so far when I put it together to review that. And I connected with one of the members from P and Z. And so basically at any time, just go to their meeting and let them know what our intentions are. Right now, they're cleaning up the language, so things that are like ambiguous, you don't hold water, we're moving or whatnot, so we want to.
So should we try to aim for like a April or May meeting to go to them?
For zoning, I would probably go to the March meeting,
Okay.
whenever the next meeting is that we can attend, that would be appropriate, yeah.
Okay. So you guys are gonna figure that out when that meeting is?
By the way, the, FOI meeting is on Tuesday, March 5th at 6 p.m.
It'll be at
Here.
Town Hall Central meeting.
March sixth?
No, March
Yeah.
5th at 6 p.m.
Okay.
Great.
If it's not a special meeting, the next TPZ meeting is on March 4th, Monday, March 4th.
Yeah, we have to do this. That's pretty soon.
Yes.
Do you wanna do it that month meeting or the next?
Yeah, I think strike while the iron's hot,
Okay. That's March fourth?
Correct. We start at 6:30.
and then I'll just sleep here and stay for the FOIA meeting the next day.
That's what I do.
You just have a couch.
Can't miss a meeting, right? Chairs are comfy.
Busy time of year.
Okay. Val, but this is really a few of us. Val, so I think we should update people from the special meeting. Things have evolved with a conversation or two of,
Oh, are you going to meet for the grant first?
well, I think we should talk about how we had a special meeting and we talked about the trails. And when a few of us, thought about it, we realized that, well, we have to go through the Regional Water Authority, we have to go through the land trust. Any possibility of doing that by March first in the winter, or going out there, seems, at least to me, unlikely since we don't do this full time. But Barbara has been working on this historic signage, thing for months with, who did you work with?
With Tim
With Tim, right,
and a couple of other people from the
Historic
Historic
Society,
I don't,
and.
do you all know about the signage?
Okay,
So
so,
do you want to present, but I do have a presentation after.
okay, so let me just present our transition. So as we were working on it, we thought that that might be more plausible, though we still only just have a month to do this, which makes it not very plausible. Because Barbara and other people have already done a lot of the background work, and it wouldn't take interacting with new municipalities and organizations as much. So Barbara, you wanna say what you've been doing?
Just to explain what this is. The idea is to have a program in conjunction with the Historical Society, where we identify historical sites along the trails, and then people from the Historical Society write up the information about these sites and stories about them, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have signs constructed, small signs to put on the trails. We'll have to get permission from the various organizations to be able to do that, but they would have QR codes where the people can simply look at the QR codes. They'll go straight to the website of the Historical Society and learn all about these sites. So we minimize signage and stuff on the trails, and yet people get to learn a whole lot more about what they're walking through besides woods. And
And we thought this would at least embrace the educational part of the grant, the grant possibility. And Val has been working very diligently on this.
I wanted to pass some of these. Is it, are we,
So are we
Is it
okay
time
with
for
making the
that,
transition away from the trail to possibly the historic signage?
okay, so
are we,
I have been working on it, and I'm going to be, I've encapsulated of what I've done so far and what needs to be done. So I don't have,
do we share these? Can I
if
just-
you could share some.
This is the electronic one that you sent over?
Yes, just now.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yes, you can read that.
No, I'm saying, you can do this, I have it electronically,
If you
I'll
were to
share.
have it electronically.
And I'll share with everyone electronically too, if that's.
Oh, could it be put on the,
Okay, so
on here?
On there?
Yeah.
Sure,
Oh, okay.
sure, is that, sure thing.
Okay. I will start, speaking. So, thank you. So, we reviewed, first of all, there was a, seminar online that some of us were able to see, and it is recorded. So there is a grant application and there is a rubric. So I have, and some of us have reviewed the grant application. I have identified, the Housatonic Council of Boy Scouts, and those include the towns of Derby and Ansonia. And the reason why I did that was because, it is including another, district, which we get points for. So on the rubric, there are certain line items, and then you get points. You may get 10 points, you may get 15, you may get 8. And so whatever you do, depending on what you do, you're gonna get certain points. And Dave, that was here last month, was very keen on how these points can help us to be successful with this.
Were they interested? Were the Boy Scouts interested in?
I talked to the administrator, and she gave me 2 more names that are going to possibly contact me. My husband and I also visited a trail. The trail is the Quinnipiac Preserves in New Haven, just to look at the various types of signage, and I emailed Sharon some of the signs.
Yeah, I can pass those along.
But they don't have QR codes. I did contact a sign company, they're from Naugatuck, and they recently finished a proposal with Middlebury, Connecticut, with signage, and they had between 13 to 15 signs at a cost of about $15,000, but they did not have the QR scan.
But and just about how big were those signs?
There were various.
Okay.
So, and I don't know if we can photos of from the Quinnipiac Preserve, but I have photos of them. But we don't have to have large signs because it's just,
Yeah.
that's what we were talking about, it's just a QR code that we're putting on.
So it could be less than that.
Right, we don't have to have graphics unless we want to, but it's just the QR code that we're putting on there.
And we also just purchased signs, right, last year to mark the entrances to some of the trails in towns, right, with, you know, the hiking ones, the brown ones that say like trail starts here.
Mm.
So I'm not sure if it's the same size, but we will know, we'll have a price, you know, from that project that Tim did.
Okay,
They,
yeah,
they can be quite small, all they have to do is say
right,
the name of the site,
Yeah,
right,
like Indian Burial Ground, or whatever, however, and then have the QR code,
right.
and you
Yeah, so-
latch onto that, and that will take you to the information. So the idea is to have them as small as possible and still be able to see.
I also contacted a company that produces the QR scan codes and spoke to their representative or marketing salesperson. They are out of New York, but she actually is a Connecticut native, and she thinks that her father has golfed here in Woodbridge at the Woodbridge Country Club, so that was a nice connection. And so I've also written some suggested lesson plans. I wanted just to go over some of the lesson plans. So I've written some narratives up, because in education, you know, there's 4 different ways to be educated. It's not just one way, it's auditory, it's reading, it's movement, it's tactile. So there's many different ways to learn. So some of the things I thought about were the Weppawag tribe and the Paugussett, the original Quinnipiac tribe, and talking about the original Quinnipiac territory, which encompassed 10 present-day towns from the Atlantic Shore at West Haven to Woodbridge. 2 Woodbridge residents that I found from the historical site, that Junius Payne and Henry Williams, and they were 2 enslaved African Americans who served in the Union Army in the Civil War. Reverend Benjamin Woodbridge, the namesake of the town, the Amity Parish, Thomas Darling, who was an 18th century merchant, farmer, and politician, whose friends and associates included Roger Sherman and Benedict Arnold. Historical battles and or military conflicts And also, I had read an article about the creation of stone walls and how their existence was used in military battles and military conflicts. And so, you know, when you do a lesson plan, you say the students will learn, so, students will learn the method in which indigenous peoples use chew sticks and chewing on fresh herbs to cleanse their teeth and gums, so that would be STEM. Students will learn about the life of famous Woodbridge residents such as Roger Sherman and his connection to the Revolutionary War, the Constitution of the United States, Declaration of Independence, as well as his position as the mayor of New Haven. A lot of people don't know, but he was the mayor of New Haven. And that would be his.
An interesting fact, he ran against Thomas Darwin. And he won.
I just
Thomas
sent you
Darwin
a picture
didn't.
of the
Of the other side, okay, great.
I texted
So,
you.
I've written everything out. I don't have to read everything, but I wrote on the first page what I did and what I need. So just encapsulate to make it very quick. I think that if I do lesson plans, if we include other Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops outside of our district and within our district, what I would need to move forward, what we would need as a group, I need the maps depicting the location of the trails, and I need an individual to complete that whole requirement because they want maps to identify where we are speaking. Right. I would need an individual to develop a maintenance plan via a written plan of the frequency of trail maintenance and the verification of if the QR scan is working. And I would need letters of support from the Woodbridge Historical Society, the First Selectmen, and other entities that see the benefit of this initiative. So there's a lot more here. I don't want to spend all your time, but I've written everything out and I've sent it for everybody to see. And if this is just, you know, we can incorporate more information. I just wrote this up myself, but I feel that I think we have a start here, and if we have those other things I just mentioned, I think that I would be comfortable with submitting it. And if anybody else wants to work with me with me.
Wow, this is amazing, you know, because, you know, Woodbridge, one of the beautiful things about if we're able to conserve as much as we can this green space here in Woodbridge is that we have New Haven, Ansonia, Seymour, all of this area surrounding us, Hampton even, that can come to Woodbridge to enjoy this resource that we've conserved. And to have that element of the historical context and everything, especially where we're, you know, honoring, you know, indigenous people and, you know, all those that came before us, like, I just think that is a huge, wonderful opportunity for Woodbridge to be a shining star, you know, like conservation, but also education, you know, and history and just all of it, nature.
I was thinking to the end of the fact that we have less than a month to do this, I was thinking maybe right now we could brainstorm and each of us could try to find a person to get a letter of recommendation and be responsible for that.
I'll ask the first.
Sorry,
I'm sitting
Barbara,
closer.
can you just, you know, you could
I'll ask the historical.
use
society.
this.
Okay, so let's, can you,
You can ask the
can you
historical.
respond then? Or will you?
Oh,
respond?
yeah, I can
What
respond.
letters
Sorry,
are
it's
each
down
do?
to
Can you
Lori.
record what letters we're each gonna do? Barbara's gonna do Historical Society, Diana's gonna do illustrious First Selectman. I do Land Trust,
Correct.
I'll do Land Trust.
What were some other
Massaro.
letters? I could do Massaro, but should we do
Water
letters of support?
Association.
Would you, I mean, would that be something that
Even
the
the high
school would really want? Because they could use it as
A
a
science
science,
teacher, do a science teacher from,
science, but
History?
history? I mean,
Sure.
that would be amazing
You
for
just
even
apply them
elementary
for
kids to, you know, they're usually going up to West Rock, you know, to Judge's Cave. We have plenty of stuff in our own little
would
woods right
you
here.
be willing to contact the
The
principal of
Sure.
teacher and get a letter?
Yeah,
Anybody
So
else have any other good ideas?
how are we posing it, that we're trying to get a grant for
Historic markers.
historic markers,
Historic
signage, QR code for educational purposes?
I was gonna say, I could draft a template lesson plan, if that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Template
And a
letter would
template
be
letter.
helpful for recommendation.
And then
only
that would-
because,
A template letter?
you know, in other words, I'm not sure, a lot of times with the grants you need, when they ask for recommendation, you want to make sure you have specific information included in what the recommendation is for. Some of them are very basic and very simple, and some of them are not. And so,
Yeah, they have, it was a lot.
If I can just interject, I had called into the head of the grant,
Uh-huh.
Kimberly,
I do too.
Oh.
I haven't gotten a call back.
and I haven't gotten a call back yet. But I did say others might have called, so, you know,
Sorry,
Gonna
they
get
did,
back to
they
one
did
of
have some
the-
good resources online on that grant and in the rubric where they gave you examples of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm
So
following.
I'm curious if there was an example of a maintenance plan on there that we could always.
there's,
Would that be
there are,
Andy
but
Davis
that's not,
for the Trail Master?
No, it could be, but there, I'm saying there was already some templates, some examples of
Mhm.
ones that people had submitted before, so we could borrow.
but we have to be very careful, if we're doing this grant, we have to be very careful that we are addressing only what we are doing. In other words, we don't get into talking about maintenance of the trails at all.
No, we're talking about maintenance of the
Maintenance
signs.
of the signage and
Right.
so forth.
Well, maybe we make it a twice a year thing that someone in the Conservation Commission does a hike and goes looking at the trails, the signs, and making sure they're still
Or
intact.
we work in
Service
consort
land
with
trust.
the land trust and
Yeah.
or the town trail master, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
The other thing that I have done is, and I have not
Oh,
heard
Andy
back,
Danzig would be a good person.
Right, Andy.
I have not heard back yet again either, but I have contacted the person I spoke about before to possibly do the design work, trade signs, and to give us some costs, and do the connection of the QR
Yeah.
to the Historical Society
Just
website.
real quick, I wanna touch base on something Mika reminded me, we have to make sure that we're working in coordination with our Director of Finance on there, so.
I was thinking we should get a meeting with Tony.
Well, when we had discussed at our previous meeting, the previous meeting was the special meeting, we talked, but somebody was gonna connect with him.
I thought that we had said, he had written us an email, that, because I was the first, I forgot, that was the first thing I did. I wrote an email to, I believe, Ms. Sullivan, and asked what was the procedure
Oh,
before
that's
we
right, you
entered.
did.
And so she responded and she said, if you could complete most of the application, Mr. Genovese will finish it as he did with other organizations within
And-
Woodbridge, that's what he said. So we did, that was the
And
first
our-
thing
How
we
much is
did.
it for? Is it
Well, we
just
don't
any
know
of
quite
it?
how much, 700,000 something, no, just.
Funny.
But, we do have a short time frame, so we probably need to get him cued in so that he puts it in his schedule of what he needs to do in the next few weeks.
He's a very busy
Budget
person.
It is
Yeah,
budget
it's
season,
budget
so he's
season.
busy.
We do need
We
to
do have a lot of
figure out
numbers
some of
already.
the costs ourselves.
Logistics,
We have to figure out our own budget. I've also, gotten the agreement that the people who write grants in the Historical Society will review the work that we do to give us suggestions for anything that might enhance it.
Almost think
Do
that
we have a
need
sense of
special
how,
meeting.
do we have a sense of how many signs we would need?
That's what I was
We
thinking.
Or how many
felt-
sites
We
that
felt that we would start, we'd call it phase one, and we'd start with probably 10.
Okay,
Okay.
We have probably 15 or more sites identified, but we'd start with 10, make sure it works right, see if we have to tweak it a bit, and then keep adding as time goes on.
I have oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I have a question, Barbara, about the trails. Is it, I know it's the Greenway, but they want maps, so who would be able
I have
to?
it. I have one.
Oh, I know.
okay, so just going through the list of things and being cognizant of the time. All right, so we've got 10 signs to identify historical sites of importance on trails. Barbara will get the maps needed, to Val. We need, template letters of support for our various parties who we wanna ask, which include, the
Sorrow.
first selectmen.
The school,
Okay, so I'll work with the first selectman's office.
And Tony.
Joy's gonna,
Massaro in the school.
Joy's gonna work with Massaro.
Tony is going to.
Do you want me to draft the template?
Please.
Yes.
Oh. And then the
wow.
other thing, I was joking with Val, not to interrupt, we should
Just
probably
like-
walk the area where we're gonna do the signs to make sure our phones work.
I was thinking that same thing. I was
So,
thinking the
just a
same thing.
little nit, but
Some of the phone doesn't work.
the
in
QR
some
code
areas.
doesn't
Right.
work.
Even on Massaro, like when I'm out with the kids in the Hemlock.
Sorry, just for time, I wanna bring us back into this, so we've
Okay.
got this itemized list of things we need to get done. So we've got, maps that need to go, Barbara's gonna get maps, to Val, template letters, Rachel's gonna draft a template letter, for our partners to,
So I could contact somebody from the high school, that'd be helpful.
Right,
I mean,
then,
it might
okay,
be-
Joy, you're gonna contact Massaro and the elementary school, is that right? Beecher for support? Okay, and then, Ben will
I
contact.
could do the middle school as well, so if you wanna do the high school, I'll do the elementary.
Okay, all right, so you'll do Beecher, the middle school, and Massaro, then we'll contact, the high school, and I think they have an environmental club, if that's helpful.
I can contact Land Trust and, Andy Danzig's out of the country, but I'll try to contact him.
Okay, and Sharon will contact the Land Trust and the Trail Master.
About the maintenance
Well, I can do the maintenance too.
Yeah.
I'll ask him
Yeah,
about the
how
maintenance also.
frequently, well, that's right, it has to do with the.
It has to do with the signs,
With
so
the signs,
Sharon, do you wanna
right.
draft, a maintenance plan for the signs?
With Rachel, yes.
Or Rachel? Even when she's here, she gets assigned everything. Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah.
all right, so does,
And
this
the
has to be-
Barbara's the Historical Society.
yes, Barbara's got the letters to the Historical Society, if you can remind me. And this has to be the final drop dead date for, the application with Deep. What is the final date?
March 11th.
11th of March.
Okay. So everything is, the final is due by March 11th, which
We really need
means
a special meeting.
Yeah, we did.
everything else should be, okay.
I will get the response from this person about design.
Knowing that we have a long holiday weekend and that many people may be out of town, does it make sense that we try to have this done by Friday the 23rd? Or by the following week, make sure all of our documents are finalized by, February 29th?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, okay. And so everything needs to be over to Tony no later than February 29th. That would give him about a week and a half, is that enough?
We'll bring
I
cookies.
don't want to answer for that. Yeah, it should be, it should be.
Okay,
I mean, we can, obviously depends on how much of it is done, what he needs to do, but,
sure.
and I'm just sending him an email, that's,
Okay, yeah.
I'm on my phone.
Poor
so-
guy.
No problem, no problem, okay, so
So-
let's try to roll with, we're trying to have all of our finalized documents no later than February 23rd, to turn over.
Should we have a special meeting
No.
No.
I would have more of a working meeting so that I could work with somebody.
How about the subcommittee? A subcommittee meet? A special group,
Yeah, we'll work on that.
Yeah.
Sharon, Barbara, or is there a few folks who can get together and work together as the subcommittee?
We're gonna work on that. Why don't we figure that? I'm not committing to that yet, but I'm gonna work on it.
Okay, I've got a maybe commitment, I've got a Val is in.
Well, I feel like
Val,
we
Rachel,
could use
and
some
Barbara.
other people with more computer skills on that.
Fair enough, fair enough. Does that sound good? The three of you will connect? Sure. Barbara's not committing to that. Okay,
Well, Barbara, you have key information.
Rachel
Please
and
try to
Val
get
are
that
committed.
information.
okay.
Welcome to the library, work on it.
That's fine.
All right, our final documents, returned to Tony by, or at least to the subcommittee. By
So
February
are we
twenty-third.
giving a draft
By the
letter
23rd?
to,
By February twenty-third,
are we giving a,
best intentions.
So that's quick, those
Yeah,
letters of
that's-
support,
Thursday.
yeah. And then there's 2 days
Friday,
of
right?
no
That's what we
school,
did.
so
So
just
it, all
trying
right,
to think, tomorrow's Friday already.
well, the letters of, those letters aren't as important as early as long as someone commits to doing it, we know we're gonna get them.
yeah,
All
it's
the
more,
other stuff
more
is-
of
yeah.
the framework stuff. So do we wanna say we wanna try to have the letters by March first?
Sure.
Okay, so our documents by twenty-third there, and then letters of support.
by March 1st.
Okay.
And who are these going to?
And everything needs to go back to Val as point person.
Val gets the letters of support, that's the email address that we
I
should
asked
tell
them.
people.
Silly question, who is going to actually write in the format given the grant application?
That would be Tony.
Tony won't write that.
Well, we have it all written, right? We have all the
Yeah,
components
but there is a
written.
grant application format that you have to fulfill.
Generally, that's right.
Yep,
And the question is, who is going to write that?
so if we have all the content in a document, then we can do it one of two ways. We can either just pull it into that grant format if that's easier for Tony, or just have it on the side and he can pull in what he wants, which,
We'll let him decide. As far as I'm concerned, the chances are, it'd be best if
we
more everybody had it.
pre-populate it
Correct.
as much as we can.
Correct. Yes, it's, we've got another grant that's a very important grant that's due March 1st, so, Tony's under the gun right now. So, but this is important, so it's something we can find a way to get done as long as we know what needs to be done.
Okay.
That's exciting. Okay, well, we have let Paul wait for quite a while.
Sorry about that, Paul.
Paul is an illustrious previous member of the Conservation Commission who has done a lot of legwork on another project. And he's willing to share it with us and help us continue forward. Are we ready?
Hi, I'm Paul Harrigan. I think I know everybody here in the room. And I wanted to thank the commission for inviting me to speak to you tonight and also to update you on the progress that I'm making on the project that I was working on prior to the end of the year. So the project that I'm going to talk about tonight is the Woodbridge Conservation Community Project to enhance the habitat for priority birds on the Country Club property. Hopefully this clicker will work. So I'm going to try to be brief, but I'd like to cover just some background for the new members of what we've already discussed and some background on the project. Discuss a little bit about the recommendations, the grant that I'm suggesting that we would go after, and the roles and participants in the project and the next steps. One of the nice things about this project is we'll be able to pull in a number of groups within town to work on it, and I think it would really make a great community project. So a little background. The former Country Club Woodbridge property is a very popular walking, hiking, and birding destination in town. It's not just, it doesn't just attract people from here in Woodbridge, but it attracts people from outside town. The property is listed on eBird, which is the Cornell Lab of Ornithology website where birders identify different species of birds that they find, and they've labeled the Country Club property a hotspot. It's you go out there on the weekend, you'll see birders walking around. It's kind of neat. A member of the Audubon Society described the property as a wondrous habitat for a wide range of residents of migrating birds. Plus, he also commented on the wide variety of plants that are growing on the property. The hotspot has identified 64 species so far through the application, the Cornell application, including some species that are in decline in the state, in this area. A little more background on the property. Its property is a critical link in the town's state-approved greenway plan, and we'll have a map in a moment to show where that links, but it links to properties in New Haven, through the Yale Preserve, to the south to the Orange, the Racebrook track in Orange. It has a link to the center of town here. So it's really a very interesting connection point, and as I mentioned earlier, it's a very popular hiking and walking area. It's a corridor that is, the property itself is primarily grasslands, but the other properties that surround it are mostly forested areas. The Audubon Society conducted a forest bird habitat assessment in December of 2022, and the Conservation Commission last year had extensively reviewed and discussed the report. Just some examples of some of the birds that are on the priority bird list. I won't spend too much time on these slides. I can send it to everybody so they can review it when they have more time. Just a little more background on the property. It's a pretty diverse property in that it has grasslands, it has forested areas, it has ponds, and if you haven't walked the property, it's really a very pretty area, quiet area. You know, once you get it into the property for a few minutes, it's like you're in the middle of nowhere. It's really kind of neat. So the location, as I mentioned, abuts the Parkway and the Yale Preserve to the south. Also to the south is the Racebrook track that leads into Orange, and to other water company property. To the north is West Rock and trails that lead over to the Fitzgerald property. I know a lot of you are familiar with the Greenway, but if you put the Greenway over this map, you would see kind of where it would fit in. So just to jump ahead in terms of what the Audubon assessment had recommended, I think most of you have seen this study, but they had three basic recommendations, and I'm proposing that we would start with some of the easier recommendations to start with, and that's essentially to soften the transition from grassed areas to wooded areas. So if you can envision where the fairways were, or the grassed areas, or trees between the fairways, and what the Audubon Society had recommended is that there be allowed young trees or shrubs to fill in that area to soften the transition from treed areas to the grassed areas. Again, some more pictures of some birds that were mentioned. So in the Audubon assessment, they made reference to the NRCS, which is the National Resources Conservation Service, which is a federal agency, and they made some recommendations with regard to planting or allowing pollinator plants and shrubs and such to grow in this transition area. A little background on the NRCS grants. The grants are not available to municipalities, but are available to licensees, leaseholders, and property owners. So that's an important thing that'll, if you keep that in mind as I go through further, it'll make sense. The NRCS provides grants that has provided grants to organizations that hold licenses on municipally owned properties. They gave us an example a couple agreements that they had used with other organizations that, for instance, had farm animals graze on town-owned properties, and there were grants that were available for that. So they said essentially we could use the same license agreement as a model and just change the activity that was going to be used, and that would satisfy their requirements. So just to take one step back, a license is similar to a lease, except it's more defined in terms of what the leasee's responsibilities or the licensee's responsibilities are. Doesn't give them the same rights, just it's much more restricted. And so the grant itself from the NRCS would be $700 per acre, and it would have to be matched by the licensee. So for instance, the licensee in this case I'm suggesting would be the land trust who's expressed interest in the project. So it would be in total about $1,400 per acre. So if we did 2 or 3 acres to start with, it would be, say, 40 bushels per acre. So not a large number, but at least somewhere to start with. So granting a license to an entity to manage the pollinators, again, would be a requirement of the grant, and any grant would have to be approved by the Board of Selectmen, and the license to do this would also have to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. The NRCS said that it wouldn't have to be a long-term license to do it, but they want to see it at least 1 year and have an option to extend it for a second year, and that option could be a mutually agreed upon extension. The NRCS has indicated that the project would qualify for the grant. The funds are available, and encouraged the land trust to apply. There would be no cost to the town, which is, I guess, an important element also. Encourage anybody to stop me if you have any questions as I go through this. So the participants and roles, again, the idea is this would be a community project. So the manager and funder of the project would be the Woodbridge Land Trust. They would be providing half of the funding for it, and they would also be the manager that would have the license with the town to plant the shrubs. The planters would be a youth group in town. The scout troops have expressed interest in it. Talked to the scout troop at the Congregational Church, the Catholic Church, and B'nai Jacobs. The B'nai Jacob troop is a little bit smaller, so I'm not sure how much of it they would tackle on their own. But the project could be either an Eagle Scout project, or it could be a troop-wide project, or it could be a joint troop project where troops collaborate. So, for instance, if it was too much for the B'nai Jacob troop to do by themselves, they could collaborate with the troop at the Congregational Church, as an example. The Woodbridge Garden Club has expressed interest in helping on the project and supervising and consulting on the planting techniques for the youth group that performs the planting. And the facilitators would be the Woodbridge Conservation Commission. That would be the group that would kind of get these parties together, working together. So just a couple more thoughts on the vegetation that might be planted. I thought perhaps Mountain Laurel, because it is a shrub, it's pretty robust. It's something that would have a great chance for success in survival. It's also a historic piece of property, and as many of you may know, it was Roger Sherman's former family farm, and having a historic plant like that for the state of Connecticut, I thought would be an interesting it's going to happen.
What type of plant did you say that was?
Mountain Laurel.
Thank you.
There is Mount Laurel on the property too.
There is, yeah. So the next step would be for the Conservation Commission to endorse the project, and that would be the first step for the land trust approaching the Board of Selectmen. So I'd like to take a break now and give people a chance to ask any questions they may have.
I have one question. When it's $700 or $1,400 with any project like that, there's trees, but there'd also probably have to be some fertilizer and some extra soil and stuff like that, so it might mean that there's a few less plants if that all has to be part of the $1,400.
Right, when I said 30 to 40, if it's figuring like $50 a plant, so it's probably going to be less, and with you know, amendments and such, I think that would be probably a reasonable estimate. The reason I came up with that estimate is the Boy Scout troops, or the Scout troops rather, wanted to get a scope of how big the project would be and whether they would take more than 1 acre or just 1 acre to start with. My suggestion would be to let's start slow, make sure we get all the bugs ironed out of it, and then next year they could do something bigger if it was successful.
Have you mapped out or targeted that acre or that 1 to 2 acres that you're suggesting?
Not yet, but you know, having walked the property, I haven't identified or discussed which particular holes we would work on. But you know, in every fairway, there's a treat area between the next fairway, and that's an opportunity to plant these bushes or these shrubs to soften that transition. So there's a lot of there isn't a shortage of opportunities of where to plant, but I haven't identified specifically which areas yet.
Was there a time frame in terms of when the grant is, when you have to apply by, and also when you would actually get the dollars and when the project would actually take place?
So the idea would be to do the approval of the grants are kind of on a rotational basis. It's not a specific time period where you have to have it in, but they group grants together, they make decisions, and they group the next grant, make decisions. So it's kind of a rolling,
In batches.
so in batches, in a rolling timeline. In terms of the ideal time, it would be great to get it going now so that we would be in a position to plant in the spring. That would be an ideal time. The next time after that would be suitable for planting would be in the fall.
Yeah.
So the best times to plant are in the spring or the fall. And so, you know, excuse me?
April, May, June.
Right.
And actually, the fall is optimal for shrubs that you're
Right.
talking about.
Exactly.
Right.
It's even better than
Mhm.
which would be more,
And we could use the spring to, you know, identify a good area and try to clear out some of the invasives that are in the area, so that we give whatever is planted in the fall more chance to survive in better years.
Right.
Less competition.
There's a lot of competition right now.
And you can
Those
also
phases.
prepare the soil and prepare the site.
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
That would be
It's
convenient.
a good one.
I just don't know how much Boy Scouts are active in the summer and early fall.
Right, if they're off doing other things, right. Well, one thing about the project is, you know, if each troop took, or an Eagle Scout took 1 acre, it's not that many bushes really to plant. I mean, it is a project for a few weekends, or a couple weekends, but it's not a huge project.
And you said the garden club was interested in supporting.
Right, in terms of providing advice, how deep the hole should be, how far they should be spread apart, what kind of amendments that could, you know, should be used.
That's
So,
interesting.
so it would be, I think it would be a project where we could get a lot of community members involved in conservation.
So the next step would be making a motion, if the commission feels moved.
invoices.
And then, that would then empower the land trust
to approach the Board of Selectmen?
So then the next step would be for the land trust to get organized and go before the Board of Selectmen. The idea is they would probably have a draft of what they think that license agreement might look like.
Okay.
So they can propose what they would like to do. And the license agreement would essentially say that the land trust was responsible for managing the pollinators on the property. So they would be responsible for this project. At that point, once they have the license in place, they can apply to the NRCS for the grant. And then at that point, once the grant is awarded, then that's when the Boy Scouts will become involved.
Doing
Or
a
Girl
project like
Scouts.
this doesn't put any restrictions on that property?
It does not. The only thing is they would manage the project for the term of the license, which would be 1 year to start with a mutual option to extend for another year.
Okay.
So if they did it for a year and the town decided not to go forward with it beyond a year, that would be the end of it. If they decided to go on for beyond the first year, then the land trust could say, we'd like to do it or we don't want to do it. And then if they want to do it, then they continue again for the next year.
Okay,
If they don't, then that's the end of it again.
just maintaining that the pollinators are, that the shrubs are happy. Basically, that's the.
Yeah, so they're,
Doesn't seem to be any maintenance.
yeah, for sort of say like a mountain laurel, there's not much maintenance to it.
Well, there is, just because the invasives there are just rampant, but they'll choke out, you know, if nothing's done, they'll choke them out.
So that would be on the land trust to have, some sense of, what the preparation would be.
Well,
for
that might also
space.
depend on the site. Some sites might have more invasives than other, and choosing a site with less might be to.
I suspect this time would be important for a lot of reasons, but yes, I agree with you in terms of, that's one of the things. that
And
we
now
have
is
to
not a
do.
really good time to assess a site.
Well,
Give it another 3 weeks, you could
Right.
assess it easily and
Exactly.
maybe get a jump on getting some
Yeah.
of those invasives out of there.
It's gonna be 40 degrees on Friday, so who knows what it's gonna look like next week, so.
Exactly.
The,
Oh, winter's been
if the lease or the license is granted, the license has to be granted before the grant can be applied for?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So if the license is granted and the grant is not approved, is there a plan for that?
So, the land trust, would like to get the grant, but they don't need it.
Okay.
So they could go forward and fund the whole thing if they decided to. Hopefully they will get the grant. Spoken to the person from the NRCS several times, and they were encouraging that the project, they thought it was a good project and it would qualify for the grant, but, they can't commit to it until it's awarded, so.
Well, thank you.
I think if I might add, I know from having a conversation on with regard to solar at the country club, which was just, it was put on in a proposal, but it was really illustrative. It wasn't indicating that we needed to put it anywhere, but there was a considerable amount of concern on the part of some folk in the Board of Selectmen as to where that was gonna go. I expect that there would be the same types of questions and concerns in terms of where this would go. So I think it'll be important to understand what the potentials are even before you go there. I just want to make sure, I want to make sure everybody's in sync
Well,
with that.
there's 18 holes, so there's a lot of options.
I agree,
in terms of
particularly if it's
where-
only 1 acre.
Maybe
I
we
think
should
should be able
take
to find something.
some photos should be taken and show it to the Board of Selectmen.
Or just
Sure.
flag an area, just, that, so that people have a visual and they know where, I think it would be helpful for even the Boy Scouts to know what they're signing up for, because when we just say acre, you don't really know what you're getting into.
So the acre is the way the NRCS does their grants. That's the funding metric that they use is, we will give you so much per acre. It doesn't mean that it's spread over an acre. It just means that that acre is only gonna get $700 from NRCS.
It might be 200 yards of actual whatever you're doing.
Well, it can't start with those 50 bushes, it's probably not
Not
a
that.
huge area, but that's the amount of the grant. So for instance, if there's a tree line on a fairway, maybe for 40 or 50 feet along that tree line, you plant shrubs. On the next fairway, you do the same thing. So it's not like we're covering the whole area with shrubs. It's a relatively small number given dollars that are available.
Is it if they're giving us $700, or the grant will be granted $700 per acre, but can you spread it over 3 acres? Or can you only do it within 1 acre?
So the idea was that we would probably do multiple acres, so maybe 2 or 3 acres.
No, but
depending on how many,
what I'm trying to understand is if all those 40 shrubs need to be put in one, we have 100 acres, even though we're getting 3 acres worth, can we spread it over 6 acres?
The license would be for 1 acre.
Okay, so it would be
Or
specific to
whatever,
that
whatever the
space.
agreement comes out, so it would be limited to whatever the license is associated with. Paul, correct me if I'm wrong.
yeah, we haven't gotten into that detail. We could certainly, we could limit it to just 1 acre, but if it were more than 1 acre and the project was successful, they could do another acre the following year, another acre the following year.
And of
So-
course, the thing is, the acre, I mean, we think of acres as square, it can be linear.
Yeah.
1 acre can go a long ways, linear wise. You're planting shrubs along the tree line, it can go
That's very true, yeah.
much further than you think.
And what is the, a lot of times they're gonna give you the money, but are there any other stipulations or, kind of checks and balances if they want, evidence to know that their money was spent the way we promised it would be, that
I think, yeah, there's some
reporting
checks on it,
that would
yes.
be,
Yeah.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right.
Cool. All right.
Oh, thank you, I'm sorry, I have to leave, but I just want to thank you very much.
He's
gonna make a motion.
You're ready for tomorrow morning.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good to have you guys. Come again.
You too.
Yes, come next time.
So, any questions in particular from the newer members? Because we talked about it quite a bit last year. You guys have any questions I can answer on that?
I mean, I think it's really cool that you put all this together. I guess I had a sort of a larger, bigger picture question, is that, I mean, this property in general, it's this unique habitat, but it's eventually going to turn back into forest unless there's some sort of management of the whole thing. So I don't know if that's, I mean, this is sort of way beyond what you're presenting on, but I don't know if you have thoughts or if you've sort of thought about how to, it'd be nice to maintain the early successional habitat over the whole property.
Sure. The Audubon Society had made some recommendations in terms of mowing.
Twice a year?
Yeah, they call it
Yeah.
the drunken method, where they kind of do this
Zigzag.
just
Right.
to try to keep it, but Mother Nature's, it's so, I don't know if you've taken a walk through there, but it's so vast of an area, and it's been left to its own devices to do what it wants to do for so long that it's well on its way, and it won't stay successional for very long. It'll go. And the invasives are a real problem. Like, I'm gonna scream and yell and be the alarmist on the invasives, because I just walked there in November, and it's bad, and what's bad about that is that all that is gonna go, everywhere else, so.
You can lead a whole thing in 3 weeks with another people that's starting to.
I wish, but you need machinery to do it at this point. It's
sometimes.
really, really bad.
So the town has done some mowing on the property, but they haven't done that recently, I don't think.
So what's our next, since it's almost 9 o'clock?
So, it looks like I guess the next question for our commission is, does this sound like something we are interested in that we'd like to endorse? And if so, then someone can make a motion for the Conservation Commission to endorse the project to enhance the habitat for priority birds on the Country Club Woodbridge property by planting native pollinator shrubs to soften the transition from grass areas to the wood areas.
Is that the nomination or?
I are you making that nomination?
I was not, no, I'm sorry, I just read it.
I'll make the motion
Okay.
Okay,
Barbara.
as
Barbara.
And I'll second it.
Valerie.
Okay, all right, so we have a motion and a second on the table, is there any discussion?
I don't think that we're, as a master gardener and somebody who's becoming, in the process of becoming a pollinator steward, I have a lot of concerns about what needs to be done there. And that it just feels like, I appreciate, you know, the effort and the idea, but it just feels like, how do I say this? Almost like it would be a bit of a waste, because there's a very big, it would be a big effort to even do this, and it would feel like it wouldn't make any difference, you know, like a significant amount of difference, and I would worry that the effort would kind of be overrun by other things, and it, you know, almost like disappear because it won't be managed. I just don't feel like we have a solid plan of like, if we were to do these plantings, and will we be able to, you know, maintain that environment that they need for the first couple of years as they you know, just take hold and establish, right? So I feel like we need to do more work, and maybe even find out, like, is that the step, you know, that we wanna take? Is that step 1, or is that step 7? You know, like, maybe there are a lot of other things we need to do and could use monies and have those efforts before we even get to planting those plantings. So that's just where I'm at with it.
Just make a comment, the project wouldn't cost the town any money.
Okay.
I think that there's a couple parts of it. One is getting other people involved and making them aware of the property and the work that it needs, because I think in some ways, Joy, you're right, but brush hogging that whole land, doing the whole thing, it's not happening. So putting something in there that could possibly propagate itself if it had enough, you know, so it could continue to flourish, could be a dent in the invasives, and, you know, I think that's where we need some experts. What shrubs will really work? Can they multiply?
Can they outcompete?
Yeah,
what
but I
is
think
happening?
that's, you know, the land trust can always decide they don't wanna do it if they can't find the right things to do.
Right,
But without this, we can't even start the conversation.
so at least it's a step in the right direction, heading down, starting something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's good to do something. I agree with Joy that it would be nice to be part of a larger master plan. But I also think that can take a long time, and we don't know, no one making a master plan right now. So, and you've got a plan, so I definitely think it's a good way to go with your plan to go forward, but we should be thinking bigger picture as well.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts?
To that end, this, I guess, can be part of the discussion, is Kathy and Paul brought this to, there's an article in the New York Times about letting golf courses go back into natural environments and examples of where that's happened all over the country, and a little bit about the management of it. And I've given you that we've given you that article, and it would be worth looking at, because it's kind of inspiring in terms of how towns have taken that on in different ways. And I'm sure there's much more detail that we can find out, but
So that could be in reference, so just to be clear, we have a motion still on the table, we're in discussion of that motion.
I would like to read through this material, you know, and, you know, table it, until we have some more information. I've done some research on this too, but this article literally just came out today.
Yes.
That is crazy.
I know. But I don't think tabling it's a good idea, because our time is of the essence in terms of making this happen.
Oh,
We still have a
not
motion on
gonna
by
do it.
spring
motion
though.
is to
I think
endorse
that we would do
Oh,
it in
right.
the fall, so I think it's about time.
To
Okay.
get to the
It may or
next
may not
level,
happen.
next stage, right.
So
to get to
the
the next
motion has
stage.
already been made and it's been seconded, so now we're just voting.
We're in discussion at the moment. Does anybody else have any other questions or discussion on the motion at the moment?
I just think that I go to the Woodbridge Country Club with my husband. I had not been aware of it. I went a couple of years ago, and it just gave me more awareness of what needed to be done. And I think that if we start a planting program, more people will come, more people will, oh, what is this infrastructure here? Let's get the paint off the walls, let's get the graffiti down, it doesn't have to, it could just be much more, manageable and appealing than it is now. So I just think that if you have people going there, for whatever reason, more traffic, more awareness, more exposure, little by little, we can make this a little bit more appealing than it is now, because right now it is not appealing at all.
Okay.
And that's my
Okay.
opinion.
No, I just think a natural reaction is getting behind something like this is important, because I think it's another way to highlight the gem of a property that this is, the natural resources that are there, and the need to protect it. So by having this conversation, getting behind this idea is another way to do that. And through the project, even if it is a temporary thing, the other things, the other concerns might get addressed as a part of it. Maybe it won't, maybe that's me being too ambitious, but that's where my mind is going.
And I kind of look at it from a different perspective in the sense that I feel that, okay, if we get all of these bushes planted, it might help some of the kestrels to survive a little bit more and a little bit longer and have a few more around to get it. Even if they go away in 2 years, at least one batch of them has made it so they can, you know,
Good point.
I mean, everything is temporary.
It's true.
All right.
This might be helpful.
So, Paul, does the land trust have any opinion on sort of the long-term management of the overall property?
The land trust, several years ago proposed a conservation easement on the property.
But what about in terms of like managing the habitat type? I mean, what would they like to see? Would they like to see it go back to forest, or, would they like to see some sort of, management to keep the shrub habitat? Or I'm just curious, like.
They haven't
I don't
talked
think
about that detail.
They've gone.
This is kind of still in the early stages. As you said, there isn't a master plan for managing the property. This is just the first baby step.
All right. Seeing no further discussion. We have a motion on the table and a second to move forward. All those in favor? All those opposed? No, we have one opposed. Joy? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes.
Well, thank you so much
Thank
for having
you.
me.
Thanks,
Paul.
And I
Thank
enjoy
you.
working with you on this project.
Thanks, Paul. Much
Thanks.
appreciated.
We'll continue to enjoy working with you on this project.
So, Paul, the next steps, you will get us, you will send that information over to the land trust and let us know what you need from us to move forward when they're going to make their recommendation or their request to the Board of Selectmen.
Right, so the next step would be for the land trust to request the license from the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
I'll work with the land trust to bring that forward.
Okay, and it sounds like from this conversation, there were a lot of questions that probably should be answered before they go to the Board of Selectmen to strengthen that request. So it seems like there's.
Like a site-specific idea.
Yeah,
of
site.
Yeah, specifically where.
About addressing, the invasives and, thinking about maintenance, and, certainly about what, their recommendations are for the property. So if you have any questions from the commission about those specific questions or things that you think would strengthen that, please reach out to us and let us know.
Okay, great, I will.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right. And we are just like that off of our time schedule. My apologies to everybody watching this fun, eventful evening. Okay, motion passed, great. All right, so the Coopop report, property category review, Barbara, you attended. their special meeting?
I did.
No, I did not.
No, you attended their regular
I
meeting.
attended their regular.
I attended their special meeting and I reported our findings on the 5 properties that we reviewed, and they listened, and that's it.
They listened, like,
And they just received it, and they didn't really give any response.
Okay.
So that all went well. Cook properties.
As I understand it, they are going to, in their report, send everything that they received to the Board of Selectmen, so
Yeah.
they aren't particularly acting on it, they're simply taking
They're
what
including
we
it,
recommended and sending it.
So that covers 5, also with Bridge Club response to Bridge Conservation Commission's response to Is there anything, Diana, that we're doing with number 5, or is that covered in number 4?
no, that was covered, yep.
Okay.
We had made this agenda prior to deciding to have a special meeting, so those responses were submitted. Yep.
Committee meeting schedules. What's that?
This was just on the 2 meetings that were coming up that we've now passed, so we can move on from that too. All right, the conservation plan of development, timeline update. Just the last that we heard is that they were reviewing some other RFPs that had gone out to select a consultant to work with the town on the conservation plan and development. When we reach out to TP&Z, we will request an update on that as well and ways that we can
And
support.
at some point, well, in our March meeting, this sort of dovetails, we're gonna bring, we talked and wanna get everyone's input to bring our past chairman, Tim, in, who's doing a review of all the properties that are town-owned. That is one of our responsibilities as a conservation commission to do, and we have the last part to finish. And so he's gonna sort of give us a download on all of what he did, and then that will be information that will be useful for our portion of this conservation, plan of conservation development that's gonna be redone in 2025. And our chapter, at least, our natural resources and open space are chapters 5 and 6, and I think there's another chapter towards the end that were relevant. So in our meetings, May and June, we may need to start looking at those chapters once we get some of the, our understanding of how we think the town properties should be utilized and how they should be conserved. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, that kind of fits in for the conservation development, that will be something that's coming up, that we will have more information to utilize once we get this other piece finished. New business.
Okay, finally, right, new business, okay, the Country Club of Woodbridge RFP submissions review. We were requested, after our last meeting, the first selectman reached out and asked if we could review the RFP submissions that were returned to the town. There were 6 of them. They have asked for our input by the March or April meeting on what we thought of those RFP submissions. Has anybody had a chance to take a look?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone have any specific thoughts?
Did you say that response has to be by,
To the Board of Selectmen, they said March, but I had asked for a little bit of time, so I think it's about April would be
and they
fine.
did not review them? They were supposed to start reviewing and eliminating a few this last meeting, and they didn't, so it wasn't even on the agenda.
Well, they had a lengthy agenda, the Board of
Right.
Selectmen last time.
Yeah, I think there were 4 hours last night.
Yes.
Wow.
So it's budget season.
Well, I watched the Coop meeting, and the way they did it is they went around the horn and they eliminated a few that they knew that they wouldn't consider, and then just chatted about what their top 3 was, and then would move forward with the recommendation that way. So I don't know if that's helpful.
That is
Can we
helpful.
Has
That's what
anybody
that was
taken
what I was thinking, the ones that had were very much about conservation and, you know, had
Process.
done wonderful things, you know, in that way, would be our considered, you know, recommendations, but.
I had noticed that one of them was asking for a monetary amount. That you, anyone seen that? I think it was $40,000. Just to do the proposal so that they were.
That's gonna cost $200,000. So any of these that we go with are, it's gonna be like a $200,000 bill to the town, just so that they can give the town a plan.
Oh, I didn't see that in here.
So, would it be helpful for, members to have like a scoring rubric? Do you wanna talk about maybe some of the criteria that we would think would be important from the Conservation Commission perspective when we are reviewing these?
I think that is
That is a
important.
wonderful
They, they're not apples to apples though, so it's a little
Right,
tricky.
so I guess the first thing we could do is look at what the RFP says and see who actually answers the question of the RFP, and you're not even.
Because it's
gonna
our
jump in
specific
here.
rubric, right? So if we gave that to them, because obviously Coupon is gonna have a different set of why they would make recommendations of the ones they choose, we'll have ours, you know, like, and then we could have just kind of submitted like that.
Ben, did you wanna add something?
Sure, yeah, I read through them all and it sort of struck me that it's pretty easy to evaluate them just on whether they actually answered the RFP or not. And I felt like you could kind of put them into 3 different groups, and there were 2 that really didn't get the RFP, I don't think.
Which ones?
Well, if you want to get specific, this is just my opinion, but I
Okay.
felt like the Woodfield Preserve Initiative,
Mm-hmm.
it's a nice idea, but that's not what the RFP was asking for. And then O'Riordan Miyagi.
Yeah, that was too boilerplate in it.
Yeah, it seemed like they just kind of put a letter at the top of something that they send to everybody. So, and then I felt like the next 2, Cooper Robertson and Robert Orr. Cooper Robertson was a little more organized, but I didn't feel like they had a real well-structured plan to actually work with the town to figure out what they wanted. Like Cooper Robertson, for instance, they mostly talked about talking to the, like the town staff, but not the actual community. And then the 2 that I actually thought were pretty good, just in terms of answering the RFP, was BFJ Planning and Peary?
It's Peary.
Peary, yeah.
I thought Peary was the most specific, but what I didn't like about Peary was that they seemed very attentive to try to get a consensus, but they didn't have individual interviews, and I think that would be appropriate to have, the land trust interview the head of land trust, interview the head of stakeholders, that rather than just having general public all, or staff all have equal input. But I did think that they really understood the dynamic of what's held us up.
Yeah, I thought they were both pretty good. I mean, I actually leaned a little more towards BFJ just because I felt like they had
I might
a
not have looked at them as much as
better fleshed out plan, but I felt like, that was sort of the initial reading, like you could probably, I almost feel like if I was doing these, I would just sort of like now review BFJ and Peary, to actually decide between those 2 and sort of like probably say the other 4 are not really worth looking into, but that was just my opinion, so.
I
Sorry, go ahead.
think that's pretty much what Cooper is also agreed to. Same things. I could be wrong because it's been a month and a half and I've been down a whole lot of it since I think that's just 2.
I agree with Ben, and I know I'm still learning, I'm the newbie, but Peary seemed to be the most organized and just thoughtful in their proposal and put a lot, it looked like they put a lot of care into it. And if
More
you look,
nuance.
well, if they do their work that way, that's impressive, and they already have a relationship with the town. I know it's a different type of work, but it's still a relationship that we have. Some of the people that they have assigned to this project are interesting too, including an individual who serves on Ned Lamont's historic, I don't know all the words, but the historic commission. I think there's one more word I'm missing now. So very well thought out and deliberate. And again, they know the dynamic of the town, and they seem ready to be able to address that and maybe seem the most viable to help us get to that next level.
So maybe if we all look at all of them a little bit next month, and with the understanding that lots of us have those two seem more likely, and look at those a little more deeply, and then have a more in-depth discussion about it next month, would that be good? Tomorrow? No.
And the rubric would be super helpful too.
Okay.
What level of feedback are we asked to provide? Like, here's the way you should pick, or?
I think they're just being thoughtful to include people more than that we are a big player in this, but.
Well, you know, that is, as I read earlier, the responsibilities of our commission, you know, to weigh in on decisions like this, so, we would be being asked, I would imagine, wetlands would be being asked, TP&Z, and COOPOP, I'm not sure if others are.
Finance.
I was at Board of Finance, right? So, so depending on, sorry, I just pulled the RFPs up. I'm actually looking for the language of the RFP itself. Which I can't see the but maybe it's in the
Well,
versions.
our vantage point is what is the RFP that's most likely to take seriously, I would think, is seriously the importance of the environment and its, you know, how it affects.
Protecting that corridor, you know, and keeping that intact, you know, as much as possible to, you know, not just the Greenway plan, but, you know, that entire migratory path. But maybe we wanna beef up all of our, maybe we have a whole bunch of recommendations, you know, for, probably need a field trip there in the spring.
Nice. Well, that's a good point, Greg. I think we should not only give our recommendations, but also give the considerations that we think would be important for the,
Well, I think that's highly important.
I mean, I don't know if this is the time.
What is our reasoning for,
Yeah, and maybe
choosing.
get that in there early, get it into the gestation of the whole process earlier than later.
but it means a lot of work in the next month. If
Well, we
they
don't
want
have to
things
have it
by
all
March,
fleshed out.
Well, it's not like we're writing a grant application.
yes.
Okay, all right, so, just based on our conversation, from what I'm gathering from folks, the key elements for scoring criteria would be, being, I'm trying to say like being inclusive, but like.
Listening to different.
Yeah, like engaging with multiple town commissions, stakeholders.
Well, especially ones that are we're mostly interested in the ones that are environmentally advocating for as much preservation as possible. 'Cause I think
Okay.
that's our-
So, advocating for environmental conservation.
the person, the group that's hired be interested in that aspect of.
Answering or alignment to the RFP. Yeah.
Is that a criteria?
I'm
sorry, what was that line into that?
Sorry.
Yes, say yes.
Yeah, actually answer an RFP, yeah. I was just, sorry, I was in the middle of a thought of, I was thinking there should be something about, does this group have like the capacity to address the conservation? You know,
Like the skill and
yeah, like some of these,
experience.
you know, they're clearly, they build buildings, but
Right.
you know, they don't really have a conservation manager on staff or something, but others might. So actually having those skills in-house or even highlighting those skills.
Yeah,
I
that's
have
fair.
I have a question, and I'm not sure how they posed their proposal, but what were their thoughts on the Woodfield Preserve initiative? Because I think, yeah, I believe she wasn't a former conservation person from Woodbridge. That was her proposal, if I remember correctly. So I believe she was.
Oh, yes, she was, she is.
She is she's a Woodbridge, still a Woodbridge resident, I believe,
Yes.
and she is a former conservation committee, so that was the Woodfield Preserve Initiative, and I thought that was an interesting one, that what might have been aligned with some of our interests, so.
Well, I think
What
it
was
is
it
aligned
that-
with our
So
interests.
this,
But it's not aligned with the RFP, because it's not really, it's not really addressing the RFP as what the town was asking for, but it is a proposal of what you could do with that space, you know.
has everyone read the actual RFP itself?
I did, but like months ago, when
Do you
Beth
want me to-
first
do you want me to
submitted
request
it.
it from?
Yeah,
Yes.
it'd be great,
Yes.
just so we can see.
I saw these.
I feel like it was in
I-
September, August or September, they had submitted that.
Do you have it with you, Diana?
I'm just asking for it now.
Allison can get that to you probably.
That's who I'm asking.
Yeah, because if you were to ask me personally, you know, like, what's a nice vision, I think the Woodfield Preserve is a good vision. And so I wonder if we could make some sort of comment on that, like, if
Yeah.
other people feel the same way, like, this doesn't actually answer the RFP, but this is the sort of plan we would love to see, something like that. You know, it might be worth
There's no
just
reason why we
highlighting.
shouldn't.
They could save themselves
Right.
$200,000.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Well,
Um,
that's what I think is that some market research would be really interesting to see if 70% of people really think that actually. And
Make their job easier.
yeah,
Sure
I
would.
really do think that
Right.
it's where there's a lot of people that care a lot about the Woodbridge Country Club, and it's gonna be. So I agree, including it, even though it
Yeah.
doesn't fit the.
It's
So-
actually, that's kind of
Isn't the
smart,
way
you
you
know,
should
like
really
the,
go to actually address each one of them and address our pluses and minuses on them
From our perspective,
from
from
our
conservation.
perspective, so we certainly would talk about the Woodfield one and just say it doesn't particularly address as we see.
But it addressed what many people do want.
But it's, yeah, it does,
It speaks to the population.
right.
So I'll just include in here something else about, you know, if people want to make comments about what they did like about a specific response, response to your proposal.
Yeah, it probably is a good idea to include something for each proposal about,
Our reasoning
Yeah, our reasoning, yeah.
for
It's
What
okay.
we, what we liked or
a
what we
good
did
one or
not.
not.
Mhm.
It could be quite short, right? This didn't feel like
Yeah.
this is anything but boilerplate, and they understand our needs
Okay.
as a community.
All right, so for our scoring criteria right now, we have, the way that we're evaluating these submissions are ways, that they plan to engage with multiple, town, commissions and stakeholders, about, you know, about the project. well you're advocating for environmental conservation, how well they answered the RFP, the skills and experience in-house to address the conservation aspect of the property, what we liked about the response in the proposal, and what we did not like about the response in the proposal. And the other thing I would say is like, do they have a real like management plan, step-by-step guide of these are our actions, this is how we are going to move through the phases of the proposal?
I like them having,
Good, sir. Good.
I like them having a management plan, but I also think it needs to be flexible to accommodate the data that they get, that they can alter it, given that it may not fit what they had anticipated would be.
Okay, so a management plan, and how
Built in
they
flexibility.
plan to incorporate input
And alter the
from
plan.
the town
Less alter-
stakeholders into the plan for alternating.
I've had a somewhat difficult way of analyzing each firm because I had to look at their organizational chart, and it seemed like some of them were assembling teams, that maybe they weren't a coherent group, and you have the planning and designing, and then you had different aspects of it, but they may have been coming from third parties, and then I
But they were like
didn't-
subcontractors.
They were
now.
subcontractors, and
Consultants.
did we, in consultants, that's what it seemed like, and did two of them use the same construction firm? Was it Ling? I thought that two of them used the same.
I saw the same photo.
Right,
too.
so we have to, I think this is a big project, and I don't know if they were all, there's parts of it that they were coming from other places. That wasn't all one intact, I don't believe, firm. They were getting consultants, they were using this person, they were using that person. So for me, reading their resumes, it was difficult to ascertain what was the experience of the entire firm, because I was reading, one did the Yale residentials, one did the Yale golf course, I was reading their resumes a lot. It was difficult, because I don't believe it was just one firm. I believe there was a lot of consultants involved in each one of them.
Mhm.
That's the way,
And who
That's what
knows
it-
how good a connection they have, or how well versed they are working with each other, or coordinated in terms of writing reports.
that was another concern that I had, that some of them seems like this, but I think some of them phrased it, we assembled a group of professionals, I think I read that a
Yeah.
couple of times, where they were literally assembling professionals just to offer this proposal.
And would they use the same professionals in their plan, in their actual?
And have they worked together before?
Right, have they worked
Exactly.
together, have
Exactly.
they
What if
worked
they
together
produced
before, and then they
as
had
a
a
team
project
before?
manager that was one, this is developing property is very difficult. And so that was why I found it a little difficult to assess each one, because it wasn't just, oh, you go to one store, Stop and Shop, and everything, that's not what we were looking at. We were looking at
Good
a
point.
different type of organization, and some of them they're getting people from different places, because with engineers, they all work on different projects, and that's what we were saying, what project did I work on? And that's what they were putting down, the project that they had worked on. I was more concerned about a cohesive firm, so that might be one of our,
I think one of the things from the past, and I think other people might know more, is that they chose a firm, and then they found out a lot more information later on, and they found out that the firms were not what they had
Right.
said they were.
Involved in that,
And,
right.
$100,000
That-
later, that's kind of
Right.
a wasteful thing,
That
and a
is-
lot of town energy, like this is taking our energy. And
Right.
so I think, asking the selectmen to scrutinize, because they're in a position to have somebody really read the resumes and go into it deeper, I think that is something that has been
Like
missed other times.
It almost feels like these were given to us, but have they been vetted at all?
Yeah,
You
this
know,
is.
because maybe there aren't even 6,
And
maybe there's
often-
really 3,
Right.
that are legit.
And,
Yeah, we'd like to know
It
their
often
bidding process,
didn't.
the board is looking
in the
to-
past, it seems they did not vet them before they chose someone. That's where we ran into trouble.
a lot of time.
Right, isn't it, the construction companies did a lot of the experience, but they were putting, like, the one was Tuho, I think it was, and they were putting their experience, they were using, it was very difficult, and they were using Langland's experience, and they were putting that in there. Did you see how it was different companies, and they were assembling it? It wasn't just, and maybe that's how it is with engineering, and maybe that's how it is with construction, so I'm trying to figure out, are we evaluating the designer and the planner, or are we designing the construction, or are we evaluating the construction company, or what are we exactly evaluating? That's what my issue was when I was
Good question.
reading them.
I was mostly focused on design because I feel like that's been so amiss. But once the design gets approved, how it gets enacted is critical, right? So
Right.
should we,
Yeah, and I was looking at it like which of these firms have done a project. I was looking for some evidence of something they've done that would fit here, you know, that encompasses all the things that I think that we want it to be. That's really hard too, you know, I'm searching, somebody's done it somewhere, you know. But
It sounds like we need to have like maybe pick 3 and have even oral interviews, rather than just looking at someone's, because you can learn a lot by asking some maybe probing questions, if that's allowed.
That's,
well, the board of
that's
selectmen
what
will
the
do
board of
that
selectmen
Oh, okay.
are going to do.
better.
That's
I think we can provide them with questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Should we continue this for next?
So we're going to come back with our sort of pros and cons,
Yep, so
and
I'll
then we'll
put this,
compile that on some sort of
Then
rubric.
you'll send us the rubric to, so that we can do a little.
I'm gonna send this out to everybody, probably this evening. And put your, you can either choose, maybe as a group, we just sort of decide if we know that there's 6 in there. You list them 1 through 6, number 1 being the strongest, 6 being the least strongest out of all 6 submissions, for each of the categories that we list. And then put your notes next to that for why you liked or did not like something, all of that, or what made you think that way, okay? Does that sound good? Will that be helpful? Great.
You'll write those thoughts when you write
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
We have about 5 more minutes of coherence.
Okay.
6. You got it though, you got it.
Trail
Okay.
funds application deep, is that what we already covered?
We already covered that.
Subcommittee, trail preservation, conservation, Woodbridge Country Club budget.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend that all of those we hold for our March meeting.
And is everyone okay with Tim Austin coming to our March meeting and talking about the projects he was involved in that he's passing or not passing off to us?
That'll help
Yes.
our new members tremendously.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to speak to him before the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, of course.
If you want.
He's gonna be away for a bunch of time,
Oh.
but I think he made contact.
We're moving on to member comments.
Phew.
Good night.
I think we've been making comments the whole time.
Have we? I've been chatting. My eyes open. No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
I have a comment.
Do you have a comment?
Yes, I think this is really exciting. I think we're really, starting to work together well. It's kind of cool.
Well done. Ben, do you have any comments?
So did you want me to say something about, so
You can do it now, you can say it next time,
Sure.
whatever you like.
I'll be super fast because my kids are
waiting up for me, I think.
No, they
Well, Aiden cried for like 2 hours last time, so.
Oh,
sorry.
no.
I said-
Oh, no, sorry.
Not to make any of you feel bad.
We'll have a shorter meeting next week.
Oh, that's so sad.
So Paul actually went over a lot of this for me, but I read the Audubon report and was kind of intrigued by this, the fact that it's this very rare early successional shrubland kind of forest. It's represented by only about 3% of Connecticut, and I also remember reading that Deep was going around and cutting down trees and actually creating this type of habitat. So, there's a lot of value, a lot of conservation value. And so I contacted one of the authors, Rosa Goldman, and I spoke with her just to kind of get more details about, their thoughts on the property and kind of how the report came about and that sort of thing. So I'll just sort of summarize into sort of 3 kind of bullet points that I think highlight the discussion is one that it is a really rare habitat type, so that makes it sort of special. The other thing she mentioned is that just because of the history of how trees were planted and mowings and stuff like that, there's a lot of habitat diversity. So there's all these different microhabitats, which is very good for biodiversity. So, planted trees, ponds, streams, forest edges, a lot of interesting topography. The other interesting thing is that since it's connected to this heavily forested corridor, it serves more than just these like shrub species. So like interior forest birds that breed deep in the forest, they actually come out and feed in these like early successional habitats. So having something like that available to them can promote nest success and that sort of thing. I also spoke to her about whether, so this was Audubon, they do birds, but there's other species or other taxa that use this sort of land. So she gave me the name of a deep person I can talk to, but there's so one example is a New England cottontail, which is a species of concern in Connecticut, and they also use this sort of habitat. So anyway, that was just sort of what I found when I talked to Rosa today, and I plan on following up with some deep people just to kind of see what they think about the property.
Great.
I'm also, she mentioned this NRCS money that you can get to sort of maintain the property, but I also want to check with Deep to see if there's any funds from them or grants or whatever, because if they're cutting down forest to create this habitat, we already have it, then maybe there's some funding there to maintain it.
And maybe there's money. That 3% is really interesting. Like if we're so unique, and I don't doubt that we are in Connecticut, because land is so scarce, right? Could we profit from that somehow? I mean, I know that sounds terrible, but like figure out a way where people are even aware that it's here, and sort of figure out like how they could help us manage it so that it can remain. Maybe we're looking at this the wrong way, of like it's a Woodbridge thing, maybe this is a state of Connecticut thing, maybe it's even a national thing or a regional thing, and we could really get some help.
Yeah, that's
like
something.
some substantial help.
That's something else that I asked her if there was any sort of connectivity or spatial analyses that sort of, looked at connectivity between, shrubland patches, and she wasn't aware of anything, but that's the sort of thing that Deep might do, so I'm going to follow up on that. Just kind of see, where.
And maybe if you're doing this, we're both trying to connect with Kim Bradley at Deep, because she's in charge of the trail maintenance grant, but she's very much involved in that. She might be a good person to contact. And I have her number, I can give it to you.
It's almost like, the person that first discovered the dinosaur bones, you know what I mean? Like, it could be like a really significant thing that we're sitting on, that we've been grappling with as a town that's very contentious, and And it's, you know, something that other people beyond here should know about.
Well,
So
one
thank you,
thing-
Ben, that's like a really cool perspective I hadn't
And one thing that
considered.
nobody has brought up very much, we people have looked into a little bit, it's connection to the Native Americans too. There are absolutely parts of it that were obviously utilized by Native Americans.
Well, there are projects all over the country. Maine is doing this very well right now, and it's called rewilding. And it's like, it's really, it's almost like it's America's healing. We're having this reckoning, right? And I just think there's something to that, you know?
Well, that's what this whole article about letting golf courses go wild is about too. I mean, it is something that is.
And it is ironic, right? Because
Yeah.
there are these country clubs and then they rewild and, you know.
Right.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so I'll keep updating the committee as I talk to people, and we might at some point, you know, if it makes sense, have, you know, somebody from DEEP or somebody come give a presentation, just to educate everybody.
When people, this just occurred to me, when Andy Danzig, the trail master, gets back, we had him come in once, but maybe it would be good to have him talk about his vision of trails here and how he maintains them. Again,
He's also an invasives expert,
Right.
because he is
So
out
maybe
there
that's in the next-
muscling, getting all that
Yeah.
stuff right.
So maybe in June or something, we can go at one time.
Is the grant opportunity that Val is looking into applicable for what Ben is talking about as far as how we maybe can utilize those funds or apply for funds for that property?
Well, this is due March 11th.
But it's specifically on trails.
Yeah.
It's, yeah,
And the maintenance of trails and.
So I don't.
all different aspects of it.
But it should come out again
I
next
mean,
year as well.
it certainly could be applicable
For the
with
connect,
another grant.
right,
For that.
connecting it to that property in some way and.
Or putting a trail through it.
Right,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what, one of the things that Paul was talking about.
Right.
It's vital in the connection of the trails in the town with the whole greenway.
why I bring it up and we
You know,
could preempt it and
Yeah.
use some money to explore that as an option.
Well, I actually did talk to Paul earlier about the possibility of, because it seemed very similar what we were doing. I don't know if I think it's too late now because we have to, you know, move
Right.
forward by it, but I definitely think that some of the things can be combined.
Do you know where that trail, where it is?
What
Are
trail
you
are we
at, on the country club, like where would you,
I think it's off Merlin.
Where would it go?
where would the entry point
Well,
be?
there's all sorts of ways to get into it.
I mean, I know how to access the country club, but
Yeah,
I just,
entry point would probably
Johnson
be
Road.
near Park Lane, because that's where the trails
Yeah.
come out.
Park Lane,
Near,
Or
The
Johnson
habitat
Road.
type.
or even further
Oh,
down.
they call it like shrub or
Adjourn.
early successional or young
Does anyone
forest.
wanna make a motion?
It's all, those are all kind of terms they use.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Is that what you
second,
asked?
yes.
Oh, yeah,
Or
it's
you-
not- yeah.
I'll third it and fourth it.
I won't vote unless that's done.
No, I'm done, yeah.
Oh, it was a
I
joke.
was
It was a
done.
joke, because I heard somebody say, so do you want to make a motion to adjourn?
We're done.
Yeah, I was
Okay,
done
did you get the
30
very
minutes
first thing